So we did look at basic SDLC and then the different phases, activities, everything, and then we did look at Agile and within that Scrum, then testing life cycle. So now we'll focus on each of these life cycles. Sorry, each of these stages in the life cycle. So we said analysis and then design, execution, and defect reporting. So usually what we do in the analysis is, as you said, we analyze the user stories and then we come up with, if we have any queries, we come up with the queries and we'll get them clarified by the be it the product owner or be it an SME or be it an business analyst if you have one. Once we get those queries clarified, what we'll be doing is we'll be writing the test cases for that particular sprint. So creating the test cases and all that stuff will be a part of our design, and we'll have a quick peer review as well. And depending upon the tool that we use, uh, usually there'll be test management tools which will help us to do all these activities. Okay, so one such tool is ALM. When I say ALM, it's application lifecycle management, but usually it comes up with a tool with a licensing cost. So all the projects will not be using this, but most of the projects will be using this because the license cost is not that much high when compared to the benefits. Like people go for that. So we have something called as traceability matrix. Okay, so this traceability matrix basically helps us to identify the test cases within from the user stories within the sprint, and also it will help us to derive the metrics which will give the inputs to a burn down chart. And a burn down chart is nothing but a chart which will help uh, ourselves and at the same time the scrum master and the product owner as well to know where we are on a particular day when it comes to testing. Okay, so when I say traceability matrix, when I say use case test cases, or when I say peer reviews, everything does come up with a template. So there will be a specific template which you'll be using. So these are in short what we'll be doing in each of these phases. So what we'll be doing in the next set of sessions is that I'll be sharing the requirements document for one of the application. Okay, and you need to go through that requirement document, and we'll go through each of these phases. Like we need to work on, like when I say you have to go through, you have to analyze and then come up with any doubts that you have. Once you have a clear understanding of what it is, then you need to work on all these four activities. Then we'll move on to these activities, and then we'll move on to these activities, which will come to a closer once we get to see this. I'll be doing everything in this in the class, and offline you have to work on the remaining entities. Probably I'll pick one, and the rest you need to come up with. Okay, so we look at different templates that we have listed over here in the design phase today. So we have something called as traceability matrix. A traceability matrix is nothing but it's a tool used to map the user stories to the corresponding test cases and then to the corresponding defects. Okay, this we call it as forward traceability. There is something called as backward traceability as well. So how does the backward traceability work? It will be the other way. So you will be tracing your user stories with the defects. So it will be like this. Once you have set of user stories, you analyze them. You have the queries. Like if you have any queries, you'll get them clarified. And once you get a clear understanding of what those stories are all about, what are the requirements talking all about, then you will be writing the test cases. Ideally, it will be a case where you will be identifying the test scenarios as well, but in Agile, sometimes they will be writing the test cases directly. Okay, so once you come up with test cases, what you will be doing once we get into the execution phase, you will start executing, right? Executing is nothing but you have a test. Your test says that you need to log into your application. When you get the application from the developer, when you get the build, you will run your test, which is nothing but you enter your credentials and you'll check whether you are able to log into the application or not. Okay, so basically what you're doing there, you're just executing a test and seeing how it is working on the build that is being shared by the developer. Okay, so per se it's not working fine, then you say that you are having a defect, like you observed a defect in the build that is being shared. Agreed? So how this traceability will work for me is, at a given point I can say that what are the user stories covered, what are the test cases written, and for a corresponding user story how many defects are logged along with the status of those defects. Okay, similarly, let's say a defect is logged, and there is not much time to fix that particular defect. So what do we do is we'll do that analysis. We'll go for a backward traceability where we'll be checking to which test case, by executing which test case did we log this defect. Okay, and then for which user story or which requirement we did write this particular test case. Okay, so is that particular user story or else is that particular requirement is that important for this particular sprint? Okay, let's say to fix the defect it's taking 20 hours. So our sprint is only 2 weeks, which is nothing but 80 hours ideally. So fixing a defect, if it really takes 20 hours, then it doesn't make any sense for us to go for fixing the defect, because there are other entities which need to be developed in that particular sprint, because the sprint is only for 2 weeks, and then again we have 80 hours, out of which 20 hours, like 25% is consumed by this particular defect. So what we do is, looking at the user story, we can tell whether that particular defect is of high importance and to be fixed now, or it can be fixed later in the other sprints. Okay, by that way what happens, we can decide upon whether we can fix this now or later. Okay, so the backward traceability will help us do that. Okay, backward traceability will help us decide whether to go for fixing a particular defect in that corresponding sprint, depending upon mapping it, depending upon tracing back to the user story to which it is being mapped through the test case. Clear? So the basic definition would be, for a traceability matrix, it's a document which is used to map the user stories to the corresponding test cases and then to the defects. There is also a backward traceability wherein the defects are being mapped to the corresponding test cases and then to the user stories. Okay, forward traceability will help us to get the inputs for a burn down chart, and also it will help us to see what are all user stories are being covered at a particular point. Backward traceability will help us to decide upon whether a particular defect should be fixed in that particular sprint or can be moved to a later sprint, depending upon knowing which user story it is raised on. Clear? So those are the two benefits of forward and backward traceability. And how a typical traceability matrix will look like is this one. We have user story, or if it is not Agile, we can simply say requirement. Even in Agile also we can no need to specifically mention user story, but we can say requirement as well. So each, and we have it as case description. When I say description, it's a short description. Okay, so usually what happens is people go with this as well. Just scenario ID, just scenario description, Okay. So ideally, your traceability matrix will be looking like this, but these two again stands as optional when it comes to Agile. Okay. So a test scenario is nothing but a set of test cases corresponding or talking about a particular functionality. Okay. And a test case is nothing but a test which will be written on a particular feature or functionality. Per se, if I take an example, let's say I'm trying to write a test, write a couple of tests, like our user story says that logging into Yahoo Mail. Okay, so the first test I would be doing is I'll be giving valid credentials and then I'll be checking if I'm able to log in or not. Agreed? And the second test would be I'll be giving invalid credentials and then I'll be checking or validating whether I'm able to log in or not. Agreed? And the third one is if you could see on a basic Yahoo Mail page or some mail page, you'll have an option to check the forgot password as well, which will help you to reset your password. So my third test will be checking the forgot password functionality. Okay, and I'll write one more test where I'll be checking the ad space. Like you'll get to see different set of ads on the left side of your Yahoo page. Okay, let's see that. So this one we had covered, and this is also there. Create an account which will help us to route to registration and complete the registration. So this is the space I'm talking about. Usually we get ads over here, or else you can write a test covering all these links whether these links are working properly. When you click on a particular link, are you navigating to that corresponding page? So there will be four steps in my test case. First one to check this link, second one to check this link, and in each step I'll be having a design test step description. Like say, click on about mail link will be my test step description, and I'll be expecting something from the application. That is, when you click on this link, the user should navigate to about mail page, or about mail page should get displayed. So likewise, there will be four steps and two columns in that. Along with that, we have a test case ID and a test case description as well, test case name. So there will be five columns in my test case template, and there are four steps as well. If at all, if I have to consider a test to check the top navigation pane or top navigation bar. Okay. Similarly, I have a two test cases here and one here and one here. There are total five test cases which I can write for login page. Agreed? So if my user story is login, so if my user story is login, here I can say um, again the scenario is login itself. So again the scenario is login itself, where you'll be writing test cases like login with valid credentials and log in with invalid credentials, it should show a error message. And forgot password is also part of this. And I'll have a second uh, for the same user store. I'll have a second test scenario as well. I'll say other links. So here I'll write a test to check the links in the top navigation bar. Okay, and registration is nothing but your create an account link. Okay, so I'll have a test scenario ID ps underscore usually login comes with a user story say 001. So my test scenario ID will be something like this: ts underscore 001, and this is my test case name, not my description. Underscore pc underscore 001. So my ID will be something like this, and I have three test cases here, and my second scenario will go like this. So it's the same user story but a different scenario, and in that scenario it's the first test case, and we have second test case as well. Okay, so this is how your typical traceability matrix will look like. Okay, so when I say forward traceability, when you look at this, there are these many number of scenarios, and these are the scenario descriptions or scenario names. You can say you can give a short description as well. It again depends upon team and how you do that. So these are the set of test cases again we have for each of these scenarios, and these are the test case names and unique identification. Everywhere you can't go with the name, and sometimes the names could be the same, but your unique identification number will be same, unique. The test case ID would be unique. That's what I want to say. Okay, so by looking at this traceability matrix, what we can infer is whether all the user stories are being covered. Okay, so if you have 10 user stories, did we identify scenarios for each of them? Okay, why I did keep it in yellow is sometimes people might skip this and they'll directly identify the test cases. Okay, it's up to the team. So whether this particular user story is being covered or not, that first point we'll get to know by listing out this. Okay, and then again, if I add one more column here, which is not typically in the traceability matrix, but if I add one more, which says So this is an extension to the traditional traceability matrix. That's what we are doing. Okay, this will, you cannot find this everywhere, but if I do this, what happens is there's something called as burn down chart, which will help us, to know where we are on a particular day, be it test case creation or be it test case execution, whether it's in the design phase or it's in the execution phase. Okay, what is our status? Okay, to know that, this particular thing will help me. Okay, if I just extend my traceability matrix, that will help me to know where I am on a particular day. Okay, let's say these are the things which I had identified, like I picked the requirement as user story, identified the scenarios, and then again test cases. So now I know what to write. I started creating my test cases, or else say resource 1, resource 2, resource 3 are there in the team, and they have started the test case creation because you are in the design phase. Okay, I'll just have yes or no. Okay, so if you ask me on day 3 per se, I have a similar set of test cases for some other, let's say it's inbox. We don't have the same set, just for our this thing I had copied that. We need to change all these as well. And whatever the test cases that we are supposed to write for inbox, those were written. So if you look at, like say 723 is today's date, and then again if you look at where we are in this particular you know traceability matrix, if you look at where we are in the design phase, it says that total how many we did identify, 5 test cases for login. So it is nothing but 3 by 5, which is ideally 0.6, which is 60%. Okay, when we look at user story, this one it's 100%. Okay, I take an average, it will be 50%. So at a particular moment on a particular date, if you look at the test case creation percentage, it's 50%. Got it? So overall percentage where I am at 50%. Still I am left with 50%. If I am given 10 days and now I am on 6th day, I am behind the schedule. If I am given 10 days and if I am on 4th day and still I could cover 50%, I am ahead of the schedule. If I am ahead of the schedule, what good things I have done so that I am ahead of the schedule. If I am behind the schedule, it will help me. There are still 5 days, but we are say there are 4 days, but we are at 50%. There is a 10% slippage. What should we be doing to cover that? Do we need to ask the team members to stretch and do that, or do we need to prioritize and have some test cases written now and some test cases move to the next sprint? Likewise, so these type of analysis metrics and all that stuff can be pulled from this. Clear? Similarly, it comes to the execution phase as well. And in the execution phase, whether it got executed or not, and we can also determine whether it's passed or failed. Okay, or no run, not yet executed. Okay, or sometimes it can happen that we had started and half the way some blocker is there and we got stuck over there. Sorry. Or we have some test data conditioning happening, like we are looking for some test data from some external team. So it's not completed as of now. So at a particular moment, if at all, if you want to get the data saying that how many test cases got passed, how many test cases got failed, how many test cases got not yet executed, yet to be executed, not completed, those metrics you can pull at any particular time. Agreed? Okay. And overall, you can say how many user stories did we target for that particular sprint, and how many user stories we could complete depending upon the phase we are, be it creation or design or execution. And also we can give the pass and fail percentages, and if at all, if something gets failed, you will have a defect ID as well. So if at all, if it takes much time, then we'll route back. So this is for this particular test case. Okay, password or else login invalid credentials. It takes hell amount of time for me to fix. So login is the user story. So then they'll decide upon whether this particular user story has to be addressed in this particular sprint, or else it should be added to the next set of backlog. Okay, to the next set of next sprint backlog. Okay, so certain user stories will be moved from this backlog to the next backlog as well. Okay, depending upon the defect analysis, depending upon the time, sometimes depending upon the conditions, like if at all, if you're waiting for someone to give some data or some third party application need to be up, so those sort of user story will be moved into the next sprint backlogs. Clear? So that's how it does basically help us, the traceability matrix, to come up with the metrics as well during our testing phase. Clear? So the basic traceability matrix is this part only. If we add this, what happens automatically? If we go for a chart here, oh no, basically we need to go with the count of this. We need to have a small formula where it takes the count of this and number of yes or no here. There will be a lot of formulae. I'm just picking the easiest one. Okay, we'll be writing a lot of wrappers again. This I'll show you the burn down chart as well when you start working on the project. So I'm just okay. I'll show you now probably. It's basically what I'm trying to do is get the number over here and get the number over here, so that if you go for a chart, it will show like whether it's particular test case is completed or not, or else if the total is some 10, how many have we completed as of now? Say 8. It will be 80%. And then again, as I said, like if you do remember, your burn down chart basically inclines from top to bottom. Like 10, it should come to 8, and then your time will be there, stipulated time. Okay, 8 in the sense, are we on the 8th day if it's a 10-day schedule? Okay, that will basically help us to know where we are. We'll get to see those charts and the consecutive in the next sessions. So that's all about in short, traceability matrix. And sometimes it so happens like in some of the Scrum process, they'll eliminate this as well. They directly go for test case creation instead of writing this document. But that will not help. This is the ideal way to do that, because it will also help us to come up with the metrics. Okay, by adding these three things, 3 to 4 things. Clear? So that's in short about the traceability matrix, and we'll be looking at the test case template tomorrow. Okay, and we'll look at a burn down chart as well. I'll get the formula and all that stuff. So once we are done with this, I'll give you a set of user stories which you need to go through and come up with this and this as well. Okay, and we'll track that through this, and then we'll move on to peer reviews, and then we'll look at the execution. Okay, then we'll move on to this, and then if time permits, if you have time, we'll look at other aspects as well. There are a couple of testing stages, testing techniques which you need to look at. Okay, fine then. We'll conclude the session for today. Great. I think it's going pretty late for you. You there? Yeah. I'll send this as usual to the mail. Fine, fine, sir. We'll catch you tomorrow. Good night.